Good morning, LEGO fans. Boy, I've missed saying that. Well, you all know that it is the time for BrickLink Series 9, and if you haven't already voted, you have got until October 17th to do so. Now, I have been very busy, but I had to take time out for what is my favourite part of the LEGO fan community. And in this video, I will share with you my favourites for the castles and medieval submissions. I had to cover this theme. It has always been a favourite of mine, and my wife's for that matter. In fact, I remember when we first met, she said she always wanted a knight in shining armour, so I let her spend all evening polishing the helmet. Now, just before we do start, I have received over 30 emails and even more DMs on Instagram from some fan designers asking me to cover their builds. And on a serious note, please stop it. I don't want it. It's unsolicited. I choose the ones that I like. It's as simple as that. And frankly, if you beg me to feature yours, I will most likely ignore it. Anyway, that said, let's begin, because some of these builds are so exciting that if we were back in medieval times, they'd have had to rename it Camelot. And we begin with this one, the Vikings of Krakheim. This one is, of course, taking advantage of our new medieval faction, something that we will be seeing quite a bit of during this, coming in at around 2,100 odd pieces. And I have said in previous videos, being a fan of the Viking sort of sub-genre, I would like to see some more sets, and this is certainly a doozy. Quite frankly, any design that comes with a boat that looks as good as this is going to grab my attention. I like the way the sails have been done. Yes, it would have been nice perhaps if the emblem could better match those on the shields, but then naturally that's going to involve more bricks and being bigger. So overall, I can't complain. I think it looks pretty awesome. Got a nice array of minifigures in here. This one, if he had a belly, reminds me a little bit of Thor out of, was it Endgame? A bit greyed, perhaps, but I think he'd do the job. And as for our Smithy here, she looks very intent on her work, banging away on a warm chopper. And of course, those members of our new faction, I would simply love to get more of, as I'm sure would many of you. Now, they do need a base. Whether this is the right one for them is, of course, up for debate, but I really like the way that this has been constructed. I think the choice of pieces and the colours used really lend themselves to it, and I'm particularly fond of the Smithy's forge and chimney here. I think that looks great. Now, because of the relatively lower piece count, it also means that this comes in at a pretty good place concerning voting and which ones get chosen. Always tends to be a little bit of a weaker area, so this is a really strong submission for it. Means to my mind that it should stand a pretty good chance, and of course, our designer has had many a success before in the program. This admittedly something quite different, but goes to display the full range of talent, really, because I think that's a great submission and one that I would be happy to support. Then, next up, we might as well group them together. There is the Viking Shipyard. Now, I did love the one from BrickLink Series 8. I'm always fantastically impressed, therefore, when fan designers manage to top other designs and come up with something even better. This just looks, frankly, awesome. Modularized in its design, so you can easily gain access to all the different areas of the building, and plenty of fun features all throughout. Designs like this with the layout and the colours used just look fun. They're the sort that I feel that when you have them on display, you can be proud to do so with, but also really want to get involved and get back to that kid inside you somewhere. It certainly does that for me. Extra features like the sea monster sticking out there, which, by the way, simply designed but looks great, and having it pop out when you twist this on the side, that's just an extra little feature there, which I think adds a lot to an already great build. So I love the layout of this. It looks brilliant from all sides. The interior is certainly not shy on detailing either, and once again, a good range of minifigures. So another strong submission. This one just over the 3,000 mark, but again, I don't think that that is bad at all for something as polished looking as this. Now, my next choice is this one, Serpent Ruin, one that I did very nearly bypass because it does suffer from what I've criticised in the past, which is rather dull imaging. Too dark, looks a bit dismal, not appealing compared to some of the others. However, once you look past that, this 2,700 odd piece design does have something about it. I'm not usually one for ruins, but this is more complete than others, and the theme of it being inside the jungle that's growing up and around it is certainly one that would fit in with the castle theme as a whole. You know, we obviously have the forestman set, but This is something that little bit different, still leans into that side of things, but then allows for other factions to be proposed. I do feel that this is one that could benefit from being smaller in overall size, especially when on the interior it's already pretty cramped. Yes, there's a fair few features in there, but you can't really position your minifigures there or do too much with it. Designing it hinged, though, like this does mean that it can be opened up for extra play features to be revealed, and I think that is where this begins to shine a little bit. It does have that intrinsic quality for playability again, and of course we've got the big serpent that's pretty impressive as well. Does it need to be quite as big as it is? I don't think so. It's probably taking up too much of the piece count, but pretty decent all the same. Definitely not my favourite. Feel there's room for improvement, but it's certainly got something about it, and I think overall is pretty promising, so I definitely wanted to include that one. Back on now, though, to a bit more of a traditional castle, certainly in the completed sense, not a ruin. Similar size, knocking on the door of 2,900 pieces, and definitely more colourful. Straight off the bat for me, the thing that really appeals is all of the shaping that has managed to be captured in this. We've got our different crenellations and turrets, the wonderful curves to the towers, blending in nicely with the rock work beneath, and of course the other sections of the build. It makes it a really interesting looking shape and overall design to me. Now, of course, it does hinge open, so you'll also be able to display it like that, but closed up as it is means that it looks pretty good from all angles, and you do still have a pretty decent amount of space, certainly up on the battlements in which to position all the different minifigures. As for when it is opened up on the inside, it hasn't got a plethora of space, but it's certainly not shy of it. Again, suitable number of places to position minifigures, and just about enough interior decoration, I feel, to look pretty good. That said, I definitely feel that a bit more time and attention has perhaps been put into the exterior of this, and maybe there could just be a few little extra features on the inside, but I am being picky. And what's new there? Overall, it is a really nice build. You've even got a red squirrel over here in the tree, something which I am convinced are in fact a conspiracy. And I say that because I live in a rural area where apparently there should be hundreds of the things, and to this day I've never seen one, only in pictures and on the telly. So yeah, I'm convinced there's a conspiracy going on there, and they don't really exist. I certainly would like to see one in real life. Not that I have anything against grey squirrels, of course, apart from the short-sighted one I once had a run-in with at a nudist colony. Less said about that, the better. Now, the next one is this, just shy of 2,900 pieces, and I've picked the Octopus Gate. Now, I try not to pick the same designer more than once in these videos. Same one did the Serpent Ruin, but in all fairness, I feel that this is going along the similar sort of lines, is out of the box again, but achieves it probably in a better way altogether. Given the new faction that we have, it does make sense to have the Kraken monster being addressed here. That has been done well. I'm not so keen on having quite so much green throughout all of this. I would prefer it if perhaps there was a bit more normal grey stonework, and then the green being a bit like the algae could be growing up the side of it. This just seems a little bit too much for me. But aside from that, I'm pretty impressed with the way it looks. Sort of combines the fantasy side of things a little bit more. I know that won't be to everybody's taste, but certainly to mine, I am not opposed. And there's a decent little bit of storytelling going into the positioning of our minifigures. Not quite sure what the one up on the battlements here is doing with the whip, but certainly down there we've got a lady who is capturing a trout out of the waters. Better be careful her pussy doesn't get hold of that, or it'll smell of fish. And then there's plenty of play factor as well. Again, it hinges open. You got the skeleton on the inside there. A staple, of course, for the dungeon areas of all of these builds. And then the little cages that you can operate too. So plenty going on. Would prefer if there wasn't quite so much green throughout all of it. But overall, a pretty cool idea that's been proposed well. Now, my next choice is going to be a bit of a quick pit stop because it's one that I've covered before in previous series. It's this, the Sleepy Dragon Inn, just shy of the 3,000 piece mark once again. Now, I do try to not cover ones that we've been over previously, even if they are submitted in further rounds, unless there have been big overhauls to them. I think I can spot a few changes to this. There's nothing massively major. However, I include it because it is, of course, on the larger scale of building. Think more along the lines of the alchemist shop that's was chosen in the previous series, obviously the likes of the blacksmith workshop that we've already had. So we don't have a huge amount along those scales, and I do think if LEGO are going to do them, they shouldn't just be sort of ad hoc. They really need to address your traditional castle sizing and then have builds like this as well. Now, if they do that, then a tavern makes perfect sense. We could really do with one, and I think that this is the best out of them. Frankly, I still really like the interactivity of this. Feel that that's had a lot of care and attention going into it and what it can do. And overall, it's just a really nicely spaced out build. It's got lots of color, lots of character. If you really care, go back and watch my previous video where I went through it in quite a lot of detail. I'm not going to do that here. I don't want to rehash old ground, but overall, I still really like it, and I think that it's a very strong contender. Now, the next one that grabbed my attention, just over 3,000 pieces to it, was this, the Forgotten Tower. Again, something outside of the box, not the normal sort that I would go for, but I think that something's really been captured here. It's certainly moody, evocative of a spooky old ruin. I think the shaping overall here is just really good, not just at the main build, but the gnarled, twisted branches of the trees and the way that the rocks have all been shaped just lends itself to this really well. Now, I don't think that there's enough to it really as a standalone set. Certainly not at this scale. I just have to say I think it is too big. If there was a way, though, of reducing it down in size, I think then it does become a pretty good consideration, because whilst it's certainly not going to be a centerpiece of anyone's castle collection, it does add a lot of setting to the overall scene. Something that would fit in quite well with sort of fans of The Witcher too. So let me know if you'd vote for it. I don't think that it's going to do too well simply because of the size. Would just be too much money in my opinion for what it is, and puts it up against some stronger contenders in the category. But there's no denying that it looks really cool. And maybe if certain cuts could be made in future, one less tree, smaller amount of rocks used, get that piece count down a bit, then it would definitely be a really cool one to have alongside your other castle builds. Now, that brings us on to the medieval hamlet. And of course, we've already had our medieval village, we've had the seaport. This is somewhere in between it, really. Just over 3,100 pieces there. And I like the way it looks. I mean, you can have it displayed open out like this, or it can be closed up. You've got really varying degrees of color going on, but they're not super clashy. So actually, I think they're very complementary in the way that they sort of blend together. Makes it quite interesting. The different ways that you can have this positioned and therefore displayed really are a bonus to it. And when we spin around the other side, I mean, hey, this has got one of the best interiors that I think that we've seen for this series. There just simply is no wasted space. Every section has something going on inside it. Now, admittedly, if you're a collector who only ever just displays things and only does it from one angle, this does lose some of its charm. However, if you can put it somewhere a little bit more prominent, maybe where you can see it from a multitude of different angles, or indeed, if you do like to get in there involved and start playing, well, then this set really starts to come alive. I'm very impressed with the way that it's been thought through. So many fun little details and play features throughout. Yes, I know the rooms are fairly small, and again, you can't fit too many minifigures in them, but you can put some in, and at least each room does have its own purpose. The storytelling has been thought through to each of them, rather than being, sort of a last-minute thought, which I feel some of the other submissions do suffer from. So overall, whilst it isn't my favourite, I think this has got a lot going for it, and it deserves to get quite a few votes. Next up, it's time to kick things up a gear as we jump up to 3,800 pieces. So a significant jump up in size now. We're heading for the big boys, and this is the Hydra Shipyard. And I think Vangelis has done a pretty good job in changing this round from what it previously was. So after submissions for the pirate theme, after trying to submit a similarly designed layout for the pirate theme and sadly not getting through, bit of a travesty in my opinion, it does take a lot to be able to take your previous creation and change it around like this. Yes, some of the shaping is still similar, but there have been distinct alterations to this, the most obvious of which, let's just address it, now aligning this with the new castle faction. The colours that now go into this really make it pop. I know on one of the previous ones I said how I didn't like all of the green. Well, on this, it's broken up. Not only do we have different shades, but you've then also got the browns of the wood and then still the greys of the brickwork and the rocks going up around it. That all helps alleviate what would otherwise be too much of an in-your-face colour. In my opinion, maybe you like it, maybe you want it all green. But for me, this works, and I love the way that on the courtyard portion here, this has been reworked to now have the dragon on it. That's great. And of course, all of the brilliant play features have been maintained from the previous submission, from the wonderful working crane through to the different aspects of the build that you can access to gain entry. But redoing the ship as well, now having that, I was impressed with the previous one, but This sort of elevates that again to a new level. There's such brilliant characterization throughout all of this. I love it, and I think it is ultimately very clever because naturally this is a faction of the sea. It would make sense that their main fort, their base of operations is going to be a shipyard where they're building ships to go out onto the high seas and wage war against the other factions. All of the other playability, this is just so clever. I love the way this is so simple and yet excellent in the range of motion that can be captured from that. Really good. What was I saying? Just the overall playability of this. So much going on with it is really impressive. So I obviously like the pirate version. This is a wonderful adaptation, and for what it's worth, I do doff my hat to anyone really who can take something they've already proposed, which is great, get over the fact that it hasn't been chosen for whatever reason, and then actually adapt it to this extent without losing the core of the idea, but adapting it in such a way. I applaud that. It can't be an easy thing to do. It's very difficult to critique our own work and then be able to improve on it, but for what it's worth, I think that has been done wonderfully here. So if you like those changes, absolutely make sure to go on over and vote for this as well. I will put a link in the description for those who haven't already. Now, moving on, the next one is the Stone Crown. Another biggie, coming in just shy of the 4,000 piece mark here. Slightly more traditional, perhaps in some of its shaping, but also equally quite gothic as well in other places. This is certainly something that's going to look impressive from a displayability point of view, from the exterior at any rate. I think you could put that pretty proudly in a pride of place position in your home. It really does look good. Now, admittedly, whilst I like the way that you can display it on the outside, if we come to the interior, it's still got a reasonable amount going on. We'll take a look at the pictures of some of the close-up bits in just a sec, but from this overall view, some of it does look pretty cramped to the point where I don't like spaces like this simply because you just can't see inside it and you can't really position your minifigures in there. However, admittedly, it's very difficult to do much when you've got a bracketed section like this for it opening out. So I think the best has been made of it. Certainly got a reasonable amount in there. And if we take a look at the main rooms, this is where you can start to appreciate some of the features that have gone into it. Some of the nice choices for colour as well. So the inside's pretty good. Proposed minifigures are also decent, but I do think that the main strength of this does lie in the exterior, which has been beautifully designed and immediately caught my attention. So a very good job. Well done there. But then we come to this, Watchers of the Midnight Sea. Another big one, just shy of the 4,000 mark again. This much more along the fantasy side of things. If that's not your thing, naturally, it won't be for you. But to me, this looks really appealing. I love how different it is. Pretty brave thing to do, really, coming up with something quite so different as this. There's a real traditional element, I feel, in the core setup of how this has been positioned. And then from there, it's just been built out upon and designed in such a weird, wacky, and wonderful way. The diorama type style as well is pretty decent. I'm not a huge fan of the waves. I think it's pretty cool how they've been done. I kind of get the impression that it's giving. However, not for me, so I don't particularly like that bit. But the main build here is just really impressive in all the different bits of greebling that are going on. There's so much texture to it, so much different shaping. The colours all complement each other really well. Again, this is one for our new faction. I think you can probably will see a running theme by now with that. But of course, it does make sense. They need somewhere to call home to, and this is a pretty incredible one. I like it a lot, and some of the pieces used are very interesting too. Now, as I say all that, I do think that this one is going to be fairly polarizing. It's the sort of thing that some people will love and others, I don't think, hate. I don't think anybody could really look at this and honestly say they hate it. Unless they're being deliberately facetious about it. But I do suspect that there will be plenty who it just simply doesn't do anything for. Because of that, it probably won't get picked. But for what it's worth, if it was, I certainly would not be sorry. I think there's a wonderful amount of care and attention to detailing that's gone into this, and the result of that is a very unique looking creation. And of course, because of that more fanciful styling means that we do have an excuse to have a mixture of the medieval and pirates as well. And as my two most favourite themes, I'm certainly all for that. Now then, a quick mention for the Gilded Island Keep. Again, not one that I'm going to go into in great detail, as I have covered it in a couple of series before, I think. Just shy of the 4,000 piece mark. I include it again because, look, it's had a few alterations to it, once again, to make changes for a certain faction that we're all pretty familiar of seeing by now. I don't feel that this is the right choice for it, quite frankly. The colours simply clash with what was previously a very distinctive build. I still include it because I think that it belongs in a setting. If we imagine the actual world of the castle theme, and we've got a whole array of it now, this sort of sea-type setting in Keep is missing, and I think would be very beneficial to have added. That said, I actually preferred it the way it was before, and I don't like the changes that have been made. I feel they've been forced upon it to allow for our new faction. But I still include it because I think that it's a pretty cool build overall. Just not as good as it once was. But hey, that's just my opinion. Buy me a few margaritas and that'll soon change. Next up is the Island Castle. Same story, just shy of 4,000 pieces, and again, I'm not going to go into great detail on it because it is one that I have covered in the past. However, I include it again because I still feel that it is just the right blend of play and display ability. It's fun, fanciful, and has a lot going for it. I think it's been one of the strongest submissions, not the strongest, admittedly. I'm not saying that it should have won out overall, but it's been one of the strongest submissions for the past few series now. And Fan Designer does a good job of adapting it again, not sitting back on the laurels and just sort of resubmitting it. There are noticeable changes that go on from each submission period. It does just seem to be getting better and better each time. There's not really anything about it that I dislike at all. I think both interior and exterior have been wonderfully done and designed, and it is very deserving. So if you want to know more about it, go back and watch some of my previous videos, or probably best just go over to BrickLink and read what the Fan Designer has to say. Good amount of detailing in here as well, but certainly gets the thumbs up from me. Now, this is starting to remind me of how things were getting with the Wolf Pack at one point. Once again, there's no prizes guessing for which faction this has been aimed at. Just over 4,000 pieces. This is Driftwood Keep, and in all fairness, once again, it's a pretty cool looking one, is it? I love the shaping of this. That is brilliant. You know, the main build up here, and then we've got this massive void in the middle, which just looks brilliant, quite frankly. Love the way that it looks when opened like that, and indeed that continues pretty much from any angle that we want to take a look at. When it is opened up like this, you also get a great view from the inside too. You know, I've liked the previous iterations of the build. I think the changes that have been made for this have all been done very nicely. I mentioned on the previous one that sort of changes had been, no, sorry, it wasn't the previous one, was it? It was this one. I feel like changes have been forced upon it a little bit. Not so here. They all do complement it very nicely, actually. It's a really good looking thing, and you know, certain details of it really make it look quite pretty. It's exactly this sort, you know, considering the overall size and shape and level of storytelling and playability that goes on in this. It's the sort of one that I would quite happily position right in the middle of a coffee table. It's a great centerpiece set. You know, brilliant standalone. Yes, it's going to fit in nicely with ones we previously had, but it's just got so much character to it that it would be a wonderful standalone set too. So really impressive. Now, our next one is a little bit different in the way that it has been designed. I never particularly liked the word juniorized, but I always fall back on it because I feel that that's kind of what it is, but not in a bad way. It feels to me like it's a lot more in your face with some of the shaping and the colors that have been used. It's designed more, in my opinion, for play and less so for display, but that's not always a bad thing. Not to say that I think it doesn't look good, because it does. It really does look good, but it's not one that I would certainly be content just having on a shelf displaying. It's one you want to get involved with, quite frankly. There's so much going on in this. You know, it's one that whilst you're putting it together, you just get loads of enjoyment out of all the different things that are being placed in every room, and you could revisit it time and time again to just be you know, enjoyably surprised as you're reminded of everything that's in there. And there's certainly plenty of room on the inside to position your different minifigures in and act the little scenes. You've got our young knight there who's clearly got lost and stumbled into the wine cellar or the ale cellar. Absolutely terrible for him. I think if I was going to get lost in a castle, that's certainly where I'd want to end up. Not sure the master or the keeper will be happy, though, when he learns that he's drunk all of the alcohol. Actually, that's the one thing that Google always struggles with. If you put in the search bar "lost medieval servant boy," it just comes back with "this page cannot be found." But I'll let you think about that one. But overall, there's just loads going on in this one. And it's perhaps a nice little stepping stone between the overly fanciful ones, you know, the full out fancy build, and your more traditional castle. This is a sort of nice middle ground between it. And then I've chosen this, the Squid Island Castle. Nicely rounded in at 4,000 pieces. Shaping a little bit different to many of the ones that we've seen. You know, initially I didn't like it. I sort of looked to me like it was melting, but actually it has grown on me the more I've come back to it. Some of the designs on the crenellations around the battlements, it all is quite fiddly, I think, in places if you were putting it together, but the overall result is pretty decent. And it is one, again, that has an array of different ways that you can position it. And that always does add to the fun. And it's another pretty decent interpretation of what their base of operations should look like. Not quite as good, I think, as a couple of the others that we've seen in that regard, but apples and oranges in a way. This is very different in its overall style of design. And also something else, credit where it's due, considering how superbly detailed it is all around the exterior. There's nothing to sniff at when it comes to the interior either. Again, good amount of space here. Decent placement for the minifigures. Very colourful, full of features, just looks great fun. And on the subject of fun, it's also got a load of interactivity to it as well. One of the most amounts, actually, out of all the ones that I've covered. Also like that on the side, we've got the little geo crystals there. So maybe that's a nod and a wink to the upcoming ideas set. Anyway, overall, it's just another that has plenty of different places for your minifigure characters to explore, and of course you along with them as you enjoy building it, if it is indeed one that wins out overall. Whether or not it will is very much down to you and which ones you vote for. Don't forget to do so, the fan designers deserve it. And also when you're over on BrickLink, don't just vote for your favourites, pop in there and leave them a little comment as well to congratulate them on their designs, because they really do deserve it. Even the ones that I haven't covered takes a lot of time, a lot of care, a lot of attention. Anyway, thank you for watching. TTFN.